one more day with his son. But then they arrived in verse 4. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. All this he did without saying a word. How unlike me, maybe how unlike you. When trial comes, is it not our instinct to thrash about like a wild animal caught in a trap? Like poor victims of chance, or the victims of a cruel and capricious deity? We grumble and we grandstand instead of putting one foot in front of the other and walking in resolute faith. We need more of Abraham's here I amness. Here I amness. We need God to give us the ability to say, in the midst of our costliest obedience, I am an unworthy servant, and I've only done what was my duty. Well, at last, Abraham speaks, and we see that his shrewd faith was confident in the power of God. Look at verse 5. Confident in the power of God. Stay here with the donkey, he says to the servants. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. Now, why on earth would he say that? We will come again to you. Why would he promise these servants to return not alone, but with Isaac, when he knew full well what he was going up that mountain to do and why they'd come? Was he trying to throw these two servants, potential witnesses, off the trail? It seemed sincere. He told us he was coming back, the both of them. Was he trying to get away with murder and cover his tracks? Or was he just trying to keep Isaac calm? No, it turns out. Isn't it wonderful when the New Testament shines a light on shadowy mysteries of the old? Hebrews 11, verse 17 and 19 says this: by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead. So Abraham meant what he said. I and the boy will return. Because Abraham's faith had been tempered in the fires of trial and trud. And after 25 years, how far he's come. The man who fled Canaan in famine, the man who surrendered his wife on multiple occasions to save himself, the man who fathered an illegitimate son by a slave girl because he was sick and tired on waiting on God, finally learned that God always keeps his promises. And so he can say to these two servants, I and the boy will return to you. Because in that moment, Abraham believed that even if he were to take the life of his son, the promises of God, through Isaac shall your offspring be named, were unbreakable, more powerful even than death itself. And the God who would call upon me to sacrifice my son is the same God who has the power to raise my son back to life again, because he will not break his promise. If God swore, through Isaac shall your offspring be named, not even a daggered death is strong enough to crack the cast iron faithfulness of God. But nevertheless, Abraham still has a grisly job to do. These next verses are painful to read. Almost need to put a parental advisory over Genesis 22. It reminds me of the day I was sitting in my homeroom back in high school, and a boy walked in, one of my classmates, and as soon as he walked in, the whole room hushed, vacuum sealed, and all the air got sucked out when we looked and saw him, because he was covered head to toe in thick white bandages. And he took his seat, and every eye in the room was fixed on him, and someone said, "Brad, what happened?" And Brad started to explain. The day before, he was wakeboarding in the intercoastal waterway at low tide. You know, when all of those razor-sharp oyster beds are the outgoing tide. And the boat that was towing him, the driver of that boat, banked too sharply into one of those oyster beds, out of which he had to end these. And reading these